Here's a demonstration to help any beginner potter or anyone who feels inspired to take lessons in the future. Follow along as I turn this ball of clay into this small vase. I'll start by prepping the clay. I need to make sure that it's well mixed and rid of any air. The technique used is referred to as wedging, and it started by palming the sides and pushing it down into the table at an angle, just like this. The air escapes out of the folds here. I make sure to do this thoroughly so there is no air present in the clay. Finish off by forming it into a ball. And now for the hardest part, centering the clay. I'll make sure the clay is stuck to the wheel by firmly pressing it down. I'll anchor my arms into my hips to provide extra strength, then lock my thumbs together for extra support. You'll see me add water often to reduce friction and keep my hands from dragging the piece. Centering's pretty simple once you get the hang of it. All you have to do is keep your hands still and let the clay fill up your hands like a cup of water. Here I am knocking it off center and then keeping my hands still to put it back onto center. Again from a different angle. Keep still and it'll come back to center. This technique is called coning. It serves to put all the clay molecules together and in the end gives you a stronger piece. One last double check to make sure it's on center. Here I am opening the piece. I like to anchor my fingers together to give myself extra strength. I'm careful not to push too far down, otherwise I'll put a hole in the piece. I'll gauge how thick the bottom is by pressing this needle down. I've pushed into the clay, now I need to pull outwards to open it up. Next, I'll pull up the clay and attempt to make it taller. It helps to make a divot with your finger. You can use it to grab onto the clay and pull it upwards. I have to repeat this process several times in order to get the piece as tall as possible and the walls as even as I can get them. Here's a different angle of the same technique. Before moving on, I'll straighten it all out with my hands and then with a flat wooden rib. This tool here really helps to give smooth curves on a vase. I'll push from the inside and use the tool on the outside to establish the shape of the vase. Now that I have the shape, I'll even out the top by cutting it off with this needle. I didn't quite get it clean on the first try, so here it is again. Now I'll use this cloth here to smooth and round out the rim. With a wooden knife, I'll cut off the excess clay at the bottom and help out the curve of our vase a bit. Here's the same technique from a different angle. I can't leave any water in the bottom, so with a sponge tied to a stick, I'll get all that out of there. Now with a piece of wire, I'll cut it off from the wheel. I'll set this on the shelf to dry overnight. It's the next day and the piece is ready to trim. I'll use these circles on the wheel as a guide to put it back onto center. Now, it's not perfectly on center, so I use this needle here to see which piece of the vase is sticking the furthest out. I'll find the middle of that line and use it as a guide to push it back onto center. Here I am double checking. It looks pretty good. Here it is from a different angle. With some scrap clay, I'll anchor it down onto the wheelhead. And I do this pretty slowly so I don't undo all the work I just did and knock it off center. I like to be generous with the clay to make sure the vase is really stuck. With a large trimming tool, I begin to take off the bulk of the excess clay. I checked off camera and I know I need to take off about a half an inch. Notice how I anchor the tool with my thumb for extra strength. Moving on to the bottom of the piece, I flatten it out and then switch to a smaller trimming tool and begin to shape out the foot of the vase. A foot can improve the shape of the vase, reduce its visual weight, and give it balance on the shelf. With a bit of water and a small brush, I clean up any tool marks I've made. And same on the outside with this tool here. I wrap it all up with my signature. I take it off the wheel, give it a once over, and then I'll set it on my shelf to dry before firing. Thanks for tuning in.